Renewable fuels, sustainable fuels, net zero fuels. Imagine being able to grow our own, so to speak, and divorce big oil finally. Imagine being able to decarbonise future transportation with our own Australian homegrown canola. Those fields of yellow flowers are flat out gorgeous too, compared with, native busted ass cattle scrub. Kind of unlike a Saudi oil field or a platform in some godforsaken ocean, perhaps surrounded by Somali pirates. So, if there's a choice, I'm going to take the sea of yellow flowers, if you don't mind. I think we all would. We proud sons and daughters of Britain's worst criminals from the late 18th century have seen the light, finally, and that light, dude, is green, or perhaps it's yellow. I'm still struggling with the details there. What will play better for the scientifically illiterate? Anywho, imagine running your ute on canola, just backing up to the paddock and letting those yellow flowers flow. Sustainable aviation fuel, renewable diesel. Look at the imagery they produce, which is flat out astonishing, I have to say. If it wasn't just abject horseshit, renewable fuels would certainly be a wonderful idea. I'm Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Come on. In researching Ampol's staggering ineptitude recently, where they promised 300 fast EV chargers by the end of 2024, and they actually delivered 92 so far. So how about we give them another $100 million worth of discounted loan, heavily discounted, on the taxpayer kind of thing. In researching that, I stumbled upon this quaint press release. Indeed, dude. Ampol Grain Corp and some faceless investment consortium are going to look into a last-ditch effort to prop up Ampol's failing shitbox refinery at Lytton in Brisbane by engaging in this completely untitillating public three-way. This announcement was less than 1 month ago, right? As if there's anything extra to learn about biofuels. The science there seems to be pretty well settled, at least to me. Look at these people, dude. How many of them do you suppose would be a dead set asset in the aftermath of a helicopter crash in Arnhem Land, for example? Look at Chris Bowen standing there in the front. It seems to me that he almost looks like he understands exactly what's going on. Perhaps it's Photoshopped, dude, one never knows. Personal opinion. This report is sponsored by Saily, the new eSIM app backed by Nord Security. Saily is an awesome solution for staying connected without incurring those dreaded roaming charges. More at saily.com/AEJC. As a journalist, I've been basically everywhere, and I've had the sky-high roaming bills to prove it. But you can sidestep those with Saily. Just select the country you're heading to, choose a data plan, download the Saily app, and activate the plan before you leave. When you arrive, you step off the aircraft, completely connected. A couple of clicks is all it takes. No need to sprint for a hotspot. Saily just works. Go to saily.com/AEJC now. You'll get 15% off. You'll never have to stand in a queue for a SIM card again, and you'll be seamlessly connected back home. Link in the description. Saily is available in over 150 countries. It's Android and iOS compatible. There's 24/7 chat support. And if you later discover that your device is not eSIM compatible, you will get a full refund. An eSIM is simple. The app plus your device's hardware creates a virtual SIM inside your phone or a tablet or smartwatch, so there's no need to install a physical SIM for every country that you plan on visiting. Go to saily.com/AEJC now and use promo code AEJC to get that 15% off. Stay connected when you travel and slash that dreaded roaming bill as well. You can trust Saily. It's brought to you by Nord Security. Predictably enough, Catherine King, the Minister for Qantas, gushed all over the big biofuel announcement the very same day. She's renowned for gushing over this kind of thing. The creation of, quote, an Australian renewable fuels industry, which would include sustainable aviation fuel and renewable diesel, unquote. This includes investing $1.7 billion over the next decade in the Future Made in Australia Innovation Fund to support net zero innovations, including low-carbon liquid fuels. Just one small point of order, Minister. Fuels derived from canola and other biomass sources are chemically identical to fuels distilled from crude oil, otherwise they would not work in the same engines. So there's that. In my estimation, that is therefore a bullshit claim. Low carbon, like please. The $1.7 billion of taxpayer cash her crew is blowing on this fool's errand is, however, quite accurate, disgracefully, in my estimation. Also, there is no way that biofuels can be economical and net zero. It's just not possible. Austrade went nuts with the personal lubricant on this one also. An Australian renewable fuels industry would include both sustainable aviation fuel and renewable diesel. The industry would significantly reduce emissions and provide cheaper, cleaner and more reliable fuels to the transport sector. In my estimation, that is emphatic bullshit too, cheaper, really. 100% biodiesel in America, so-called B100, is $4.57 per gallon in American greenbacks, and their banana gallons, as Curtis from Cutting Edge Engineering would probably say. Regular diesel is $4.07. Biodiesel is therefore 12% more expensive than the fossil stuff. The feedstock is expensive, and so are the processes that turn the seeds into the fuel. And they're also filthy, just for good measure. Those prices are according to the US Department of Energy from their Alternative Fuel Price Report 2024. I think that was from April. I'd have to check. So if we run the nation on B20, which is 20% biodiesel, up to 20% biodiesel, the price of everything instantly goes up because transportation is built into the cost of everything. Biofuels are therefore inflationary. There's nothing you can do about that. We all just have to suck it up and deal with it. But saying they're cheaper, that's a bit rich. If you run the economy on biodiesel, the price of everything is going to go up. There's only one reason to embrace biofuel, and predictably, none of the people involved in promoting it are actually talking about it. And the reason is simply energy security. If we had, Erica Eleniak burst out of a cake and wave her magic, let's call them assets, at this problem, thus transforming all diesel in Shitsville to B20, which is up to 20% biodiesel, we would dilute our dependency on foreign oil considerably by as much as 2 billion litres annually, because we consume about 10 billion litres of diesel every year. But this would be neither all that green nor especially low carbon, and there are quite a few more problems when you think about it. I'm pretty sure that the spin doctors tasked with shoving this green agenda down society's throat are secretly delighted, like off the chart, thrilled, that the average punter has not a chance in hell of ever conceptualising the size and scope of the problem. Like, the problem is we've got society's considerable thirst for fossil fuels here, liquid fuels in this case, and we want to put a dent in it with biofuels. What are the size and scale type issues that we need to be aware of? And that's what I want to address today, which is why I'm going to use one of my favourite implements to jam these issues home, the mighty Leyland branded King Dick 1/2 inch and 5/8 Whitworth double open ender. Possibly the most reliable implement Leyland ever made. And of course, by made, I mean bought. They had the good sense to buy it from the folks at King Dick, which is why it still exists today and hasn't just turned into a bucket of rust in a paddock somewhere. Incidentally, I'm going to get someone in the comments who's going to say, well, that looks bigger than 1/2 inch to me, and that looks bigger than 5/8, because they're the sizes, 1/2 inch Whitworth and 5/8 Whitworth. Dude, I would say, very astute of you. However, the Whitworth universe is defined by the thread size as opposed to the across the flats of the hex size. So this is across the flats of the hex corresponding to a 1/2 inch diameter thread. So there's that, and the same thing with 5/8. So let us conceptualize this problem. Let's put it in perspective, which almost no one can do. We've got this thirst for diesel in Australia, which is 10 billion litres a year. And this is like saying there are 10 billion nymphomaniacs in heaven. Let's go. Everyone knows that's a lot of nymphomaniacs, but it's hard to conceptualise it. Like, how big a box will we need? Well, how big a box will we need for 10 billion litres of diesel? The only way I can put this in perspective for you is to say, well, our box, let's start out with a football field. Most people can conceptualise the length of a football field, 100 metres. Let's make a box, 100 metres, football field long, and a football field wide, like the length of a football field wide. So 100 metres by 100 metres. How tall do we have to build it to fit 10 billion litres of anything, but in this case, diesel? Okay? Guess, dude, how tall? 1 kilometre. Okay, so this would probably make it the tallest man-made structure on Earth if we built such a box. And for the petrol, 20 billion litres, same box, twice as high, like move over Burj Khalifa, okay? They're big boxes, kind of what I'm saying. So if we wanted B20, we'd need a box that was the same size, footprint-wise, but 200 metres high. Okay, that's how much biodiesel we need so that we can blend it with the 8 billion litres we've got left after we tick this box and go down this track. All right, so what do we need to do that now that you can appreciate the size of the problem? Like, imagine standing there, there's this ginormous rectangular monolith in front of you. It's full of diesel. It's as long as a football field and as wide as a football field is long, and it's 1 kilometre high. Like, that's a freaking big box, dude. So what do we know about canola? 1 litre of canola makes 1 litre of biodiesel. That's just how that rolls. Canola weighs 920 grams per litre, so it's a pretty dense oil. Diesel's about 850 grams per litre, but anyway, 920 grams per litre, 0.92 kilos per litre. If we need 2 billion litres of canola for our box that's 200 metres high, then we need 1.8 billion kilograms of canola, which is the same thing as 1.8 million metric tonnes. Okay? That makes perfect sense. Don't worry about how big that is yet, because we need to grow the seed, right? And rapeseed is like 40% oil by mass. So we get our 1.8 million metric tonnes and divide it by 40%, we need 4.5 million metric tonnes of rapeseed. And this is getting hard to conceptualise as well, right? How much rapeseed is that? How big a room do we need? How big a silo? All of this stuff. Well, thankfully, the Americans have been spying on us with their filthy satellites. They've published a report that you can look at online. It's by the US Department of Agriculture. It's called Commodity Intelligence Report September 2022, and it's got all of our canola production statistics in it, because this is so vital for their national security, I suppose. Anyway, rapeseed in Australia recently, I think this is for 2022, 6.7 million metric tonnes spread over 3.6 million hectares. 1 hectare is the footprint of our box, incidentally. So, if we just take the basic numbers here, the 4.5 million metric tonnes, and we divide it by the total production of 6.7, and we multiply it by 3.6 million hectares, we need 2.4 million football field-ish areas just to provide enough rapeseed to get B20. 2.4 million hectares, which would be 67% of the total rapeseed production in this country. And lately we've had pretty good production because the seasons have been okay, and they're not always, right? But you say to yourself, that canola that we already grow, well, it's been used for stuff, right? It's already gainfully employed, so we can't just take 2/3 of it and turn it into B20 without the economics of everything else we're using rapeseed for being completely inverted and the fish and chips costing $1 billion each or something. So we'd have to grow 67% more rapeseed, essentially, okay? And the 2.4 million hectares, which we would need to do that, okay, the Greater Sydney area. If you're not from around here, there's 2 Sydneys. There's the City of Sydney, which is a tiny little precinct right in the harbour there with the Opera House on it. And then there's the Greater Sydney area, which starts at the Pacific Ocean over here on the east, and then up in the north it's like Palm Beach, and then Barowra, and across to Windsor and Richmond, and then it's over to Springwood in the lower Blue Mountains in the west, and then it goes across through Camden and Campbelltown and Engadine and back to the ocean, which is a freaking big area. If you wanted to circumnavigate that in your car, bring lunch. Okay? We need 2 of them because the city of Greater Sydney area is 12,000 square kilometres, which is 1.2 million hectares. And we need 2 of them, and it's all just a sea of yellow flowers, and that's what we would need to grow reliably if we were going to have a B20 diesel economy in this country. And that's not including this so-called renewable jet fuel that they also want to do. So we need even more than that. Like, this is a big problem, right? And one of the other problems with doing this, incidentally, is that most of Australia is a freaking desert, and rapeseed is a winter crop, and it only grows in fairly arable land. Like, it's the same sort of land that you can grow wheat and oats and barley in. So I'd suggest if we wanted to increase our production of rapeseed by 67%, we would also, by definition, be inverting the economics of wheat and barley and oats. And then we're opening the door to this massive debate of food versus fuel. Because if we grow too much wheat and nobody's in the world is starving, then yay, grow canola, grow rapeseed for canola, turn it into diesel and drive on that. But that's only 20%, right? The 80% of the diesel in this scenario with 2 Greater Sydney areas planted out for rapeseed, and we solve the food versus fuel problem, that's only B20, right? To be net zero, to be fully renewable, we need to do B100, and that would require 5 times as much. So we'd need 10 times the area of Greater Sydney planted out reliably with canola, with rapeseed to make canola. And to me, my head is exploding over the logistics and the economics of making that happen. See, it's one thing to get the minister and some corporate wonks in a photograph about investigating biodiesel or whatever, but it's another thing to find a spare 10 greater Sydney areas and plant them out with rapeseed and produce the canola and then refine it into biodiesel, because that's what this fantasy of net zero actually requires if you're going to implement it. The next time you see horseshit greenwashing of this nature orbiting renewable, sustainable, net zero biofuels, consider this, okay? Ethanol is widely marketed in exactly the same way, E10. And I have to say, there's absolutely nothing wrong with running E10 in your engine from a combustion viewpoint. It's absolutely fine. But you have to grow the crops, don't you? And that can only be done petrochemically. And you need petrochemical fertiliser, petrochemical harvesters, and petrochemical transportation of the raw feedstock, which is wheat in New South Wales. The so-called Clean Energy Finance Corporation recently handed Manildra $85 million on the taxpayer to switch from coal to methane to heat up its plant to create the ethanol in their distillery by the sea in Nowra, which is where the ethanol in Sydney's E10 actually comes from. They make a few 100 million litres annually, which is pretty much a dribble of piss in rather a big bucket of petrol. This so-called cleaner gas to fire the boilers is going to emit about 500,000 tonnes of CO2 annually. And this is just to turn wheat into ethanol, right? With hydrocarbon energy, not including keeping the lights on, running the pumps at the factory, etc., with coal-fired electricity, and distributing the end product using diesel. Just because the feedstock is a fucking plant does not make the end product green, nor does it make it low carbon. Here's a diagram of large-scale biodiesel production from canola. It's the column on the left, okay? There are 10 essential steps to convert rapeseed into biodiesel, and they're all quite energy intensive. Rapeseed, just to completely disambiguate things here, is the plant. Canola is the oil which is derived, okay? The word itself derives from the Latin rapa, or rapum, which means turnip. I guess they're related. It's got nothing to do with the deplorable crime, incidentally, which derives from the Latin word rapere, which means to snatch or carry off, if memory serves. The study in which that table appeared was published in the respected journal Bioresource Technology from September 2022, so pretty current. It's a detailed life cycle assessment of the energy and the CO2 when you turn rapeseed into biodiesel, and it was done by 6 researchers from the James Watt School of Engineering at the University of Glasgow. Essentially, turning seeds into diesel is a pretty filthy industrial process, meaning reasonably typical of industrial processes generally, including seemingly green processes such as recycling of plastic, aluminium, steel, paper, glass, whatever. The team of Glaswegian engineers found in total that to make 1 tonne of biodiesel, you need, among other things, roughly 100 litres of diesel, 318 kilos of petrochemical fertiliser, about 320 kilowatt hours of electrical energy, another roughly 1.2 megawatt hours of energy from natural gas, and 2,600 litres of water, not including the water required to grow the crops, which hopefully just falls from the sky. You also need significant quantities of hexane, phosphoric acid, sodium hydroxide, methanol, sulfuric acid, and potassium hydroxide. It's not sounding quite so fucking herbal now, is it? My simple observation here is personal opinion. Greenwashing a process this filthy is a disgraceful misrepresentation for a government department or a minister, okay? And in my view, this kind of bullshit demands oxygenation. Refining crude oil is also filthy. Absolutely. We agree on that too. But calling these fuels sustainable or renewable or clean or green simply because the plants look so nice in the marketing material is horse shit on a scale that makes the Himalayas just look like foothills. The study found that the centralised large-scale production system emitted 2.63 tonnes of CO2 equivalent per tonne of biodiesel produced, with energy demand of 32.15 gigajoules per tonne of biodiesel produced. Here's another interesting fun fact about why this process can never be net zero. 32 gigajoules of input energy is the same as 32,000 megajoules. And I know I'm bastardising the units. I'm only doing it because ordinary people don't think in gigajoules. It's so confusing, right? When you burn 1 tonne of diesel, you get about 46,000 megajoules of heat energy. So you've got to put in 32,000 megajoules to take out 46,000 megajoules to turn and burn in some vehicle. And this, incidentally, is not a violation of the first law of thermodynamics, because the sun put in the rest of the energy while the crop was growing and everyone wasn't looking. But the 32,000 you put in wasn't green up front, was it? Nor was it renewable, nor sustainable. That's just a scientifically illiterate bullshit fantasy, which is why the median voter swallows all of this sustainable horse shit, right? They want to believe it, we all do, but it's just smoke and mirrors, mainly smoke. It's horse shit that's been gift wrapped for an orgy of confirmation bias. Like, it would be great if this shit could be true. But we had to spend 32,000 in filthy energy to get 46,000 in biodiesel. The net energy gain is only 14,000. Alternatively, I suppose, we could make a tonne of biodiesel and pump 2/3 of the biodiesel back into the process to keep it ticking over, to keep it turning and burning, and then just burn the remaining third in our machines. Unfortunately, however, you'd need 3 times the arable land for that, because that's really what we're talking about here. And inconveniently, most of Australia is a desert that does not support growing those kinds of crops. That input energy was overwhelmingly diesel and petrochemical fertiliser and industrial chemicals and coal-fired electricity and methane for the furnaces and the boilers. So less than 1/3 of the energy you get from burning biodiesel, with all of the associated efficiency of large-scale production and current technology, is actually green. This is the problem with all these enthusiastically marketed green processes. Green in inverted commas. Clean fuels, sustainable fuels, renewable fuels, recycling generally. Spin doctors and their advertising agencies are extremely good with the buzzwords and the artwork, but the applied science doesn't give a shit about any of that. The first law of bare-knuckle physics is, if you want something useful, the input energy is a filthy bitch. What all of this actually highlights is that Ampol, GrainCorp, the federal government, and an armada of other green masturbators are spectacularly off track, relying on the scientific illiteracy of the general population to help them push their bullshit messages. If you want to be green or greener or more renewable or more sustainable, I'm with you, dude. I want that too. But whatever you want in that domain, what makes absolute sense here is what none of these shot-calling dickheads is actually peddling, which would be to minimise the upfront consumption of everything simply by living more efficiently. But Ampol and GrainCorp don't really want you to do that, do they? Ampol wants to keep its uncompetitive Lilliputian shitbox refinery open. Plus, it'd be lovely to see you scarfing more of their shitful 2-week-old lukewarm rat pies in their convenience stores. The hatefully named fooderies. And Grain Corp's only objective really is to make canola and other grains seem more seductive even than miscellaniac bursting out of a cake on one's birthday. They certainly have no skin in the game of efficiency, do they? And dude, I really think Chris Bowen is maxed out looking like, she's all good, mate, under control, I got this, for the 1/60th of a second that the shutter is actually open. As for astute policy direction, I'm still hearing crickets.